So getting back to that very important secret that you need to protect, which is your private key, if you end up storing it on a hardware that's actually designed to share information rather than keep secrets, it's kind of like putting a bank vault in a mall. Like, even if you build the best bank vault in the world, you're still gonna have, a shop at the bottom and then another one at the top, and then people like passing by in front of the vault every single day. So it's not going to be as safe as if you have it isolated. So that gets us to what Ledger does. Ledger enables you to actually generate those keys and secure it in a Web3 hardware, which means that it's a device that was designed for the Internet of Value, not the Internet of Information. And it's basically keeping your private keys on what we call the secure element chip, which is the same kind of chips that you could find in your credit card or biometric passport.
NFTs are redefining the cryptocurrency landscape and taking the world by storm. This is Ashley Smith from Fame Lady Squad, and I want to welcome you to From the Blockchain. As leaders of an all-female avatar NFT project, we want to share our insight and industry knowledge with you. We want to empower more women to participate and dominate in the NFT space. So whether you're an early adopter or just a curious learner, we hope you join us to explore the exciting world of NFTs. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to From the Blockchain, where we talk about innovation and thought leadership in the Web3 space. We are so happy to be back with you today. I am talking to my dear friend, Cara, aka Lady C, and she's in a peculiar place right now. Cara, how are you doing? Where the heck in the world are you right now?
I'm really good. As luck would have it, I've booked a couple of theater gigs. And so now all of a sudden I am someone who is in Web3, but balancing it with my Web2 profession, which is acting. And so I'm doing a show called The Art of Faversham, and it's happening in New York at the iconic Christopher Street, which is where kind of the Pride Parade even began. It's where they had the first protest, and the theater I'm at is called the Lucille Lortel Theater. And right now I am in a random room because we're in the middle of what is called Tech Week. And so when you're putting on a theater show, you kind of rehearse the script, figure out what you want to do, while an entire other team works on what the set will look like, what the lighting will look like, what props you're going to use. And this week, which is a really hard week, but a great week, is a week where we kind of mesh everything together. So we're trying out props for this first time, costume for the first time. I have 2 wigs. I wore one of them today. And we do it with the most crazy 12-hour days where it's just, you start the day we started at noon today. We're going almost all the way till midnight, around 10 o'clock tonight. And it's just kind of, that's pretty much what we're working on. And I'm
That's
also
so cool.
I'm still Web3 focused. I did a little Instagram post today, meshing the ideas of how to share innovation. And I really we have little advertisements for the play, and I'm really tempted to create a little AR filter for it. So yeah, it's just,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because now it's that mixture of balancing out Web3 with life, really.
Well, and you know what? It's just at the time of this recording, it's the beginning of March, and it's the beginning of Women's History Month. And you know what? Has there ever been another time when women have just been trying to do it all? And Web3, I think, enables a lot of that. But certainly that's what we're all doing. We're doing our best to do it all. And there's a reason, by the way, folks, if you're listening on audio, my video presentation has not been awesome because I still am full on mom life, and Cara is in a closet. So we're just making it work. But on that note, I do want to talk about our show, which was recorded a couple of weeks ago. Really, really enjoyed, and I hope our audience is looking forward to this one. We spoke with Mo Rels. He is with Ledger, and he also was and is still a host on the Ledger podcast. Although my understanding is now more hosts involved with that show. But it was funny meeting him and hearing his voice because he's from Paris. I was like, I know your voice. I've learned from you. So he was wonderful. We've been wanting to talk to someone from Ledger on this show for some time. And many of you are probably familiar with Ledger, mostly known for their custodial crypto hardware, safety and security hardware. We get into it, so I'm going to avoid getting super nerdy right now and trying to explain it all. But what we really talk about is self-custody, what it means, why it's important. We talk about Web 2 hardware versus Web 3 hardware and the difference between Web 2 hardware, such as your phone, which is really set up for Web 2, which is the internet of information, and it's designed to share information. Web 3 hardware is designed for the internet of value and is really designed for privacy and protection. And so that's kind of, I loved him putting it in that context. It helped me really think about this and why these practices are so important. We learn a bit about new tools for brand new users that Ledger is currently working on, really making it easier for non-crypto native people to start participating in self-custody and in Web3. We talk a bit about how Ledger really went from being a niche company to something that really started to fall more into the mainstream, especially as the NFT marketplace boomed and how much that impacted what they were doing. So that was really interesting to hear about. Gets into some of the still challenges that exist that they're working through in terms of like making these systems better. Touch on blind signing as an example, which he talks about. So I'll let him talk about it. And one other thing I want to mention, he uses the word dApp a lot at one point, and it isn't till way later that I ask him, what is a dApp? So our audience knows. So since we're recording this now, I'll say a dApp is a decentralized app. That's really all you need to know. He gets into it a little bit more later on in the show, but if you start hearing the word dApp and never heard it before, that's what it is, a decentralized application. So that's it. I'm so excited for our audience to have the chance to hear this, but there's also a couple fun other things we want to talk about quickly before we get going.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm so glad that we have Mo on the show. I met him in Miami, and he just really he has a great way of explaining the importance of Ledger, which was my experience through FLS and our time there, and self-custody of those kind of things. And Ledger, I'm really thankful for Ledger because there are a few other wallets, hardware wallets, but Ledger really kind of took the lead on making sure that people know the importance of, the kind of like not your keys, not your crypto, but also like moving crypto off of wallets and actually having it, and, seeing some of the crashes that we've seen and some of the other problems that we had in the space. It was so great to have kind of support from Ledger or guidance from Ledger. And then even more so that kind of personal experience that Mo kind of brings. He talks in a way that takes away kind of the technical stuff and makes it a bit more human. And so I'm really glad that he's on the show, and I'm glad that we've all connected.
Yeah. And thank you for that introduction. This is where I think it's important, as we reflect on the year and a half behind us, as we've been leading Fame Lady Squad, how important some of these IRL connections have been. Folks we've had the opportunity to meet because we've been present at conferences and at different functions. I would really argue that those relationships and that exposure to who's really out there has been so invaluable. And being able to separate the movers and shakers of online from like the people who are actually out in the real world, building, doing cool things, whose, dare I say, voices might matter a little more.
Yeah. And like the gift of this podcast of like making those connections and then bringing it out to all of you, like you getting the chance to hear Mo talk, I think is really great. And all of the other people that we've had on the podcast, it's such a gift.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I agree. Yes. Well, we're still very proud to be doing this, and we do need to show something that we're working on at Fame Lady Squad, because we're just excited. We haven't had many activations, especially over the last 6 months, as it's been a slower time in the marketplace. But we're excited to announce that Fame Lady Squad is going to start doing regular collaborative artist drops, small collections with artists, which will often very much include Fame Lady Squad kind of iconography and different ways of tying like who we are together, at least our personality and values with their art. And I'm so excited about that. We can't necessarily get into all the details today in terms of like when and where to find all of this. When the show drops, we probably will have some information out about our very first drop. So we're excited to at least share that with you. And if that's the case, we'll make sure the link is in the show notes as to where you can find that. But we are excited because our very first artist, I can say her name. Her name is Lambie. And we've seen the pieces and they are fire. I don't know, Cara, I'm so excited for everyone to have the opportunity to see these really thoughtful and I would say provocative pieces of art that she's been working on for us.
I'm super stoked about it. Like, I can't help but think, how you had mentioned we're in Women's History Month. And like, even I was just at the moment you said that, I was even thinking about the Rihanna performance, like pregnant Rihanna just killing it at the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And,
How have we
you
not
know,
talked about
I know
that?
it's so fantastic, but also like Lambie is such a force as an artist, period. But she's definitely like celebrating her feminine energy, and I just think it's so cool that we're starting this piece with her,
Mhm.
and yeah, and just like all of these kind of synchronistic synergies taking place, and I'm really
Mhm.
excited to share that drop and have people
Yeah.
see the work.
Yes. So from the blockchain, you've heard it here. We'll make sure that you have the info. Of course, when everything's available, our Fame Lady Squad, social handles will be sharing about this activation. So very excited, and stay tuned for more. And we also have a few other cool things to announce in the near future. But anyways, without further ado, we need to get on to the show. I do want to thank our sponsor, Daz 3D, of course. Daz is a leader in Web3 strategy, marketing, and full stack development. They have worked with some really important and iconic brands and companies with Web3 activations. They also, of course, they run one of the largest 3D creation platforms serving millions of professional and recreational artists worldwide. So thank you, Daz 3D, for helping us to continue to bring from blockchain to the world. And without further ado, let's get on to the show and let's hear from Mo. Lady C, Cara, it's been so wonderful to see you over there. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful time. And I can't wait to come see you IRL with one of your performances.
I would love that. Always awesome to see you aboard, Becky, aka Ashley.
All right, everyone. Mo, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you on From the Blockchain today, all the way from Paris, I believe. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It was a sunny day in Paris. I think it was first day I've seen the sun for a month, so I'm very happy.
Oh, that's
And
good.
yeah, excited to be with you, Ashley.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, having somebody from Ledger coming on From the Blockchain has been an objective of ours since the beginning. Ledger obviously has such a strong and important presence in the Web3 space. And like one of the communities, businesses that makes the space better and better versus the other way around, which sometimes we see those roller coaster ups and downs. So I just want to say we really appreciate having you here. As community or head of community and education at Ledger, I'm sure you've seen so much. I think before we dive in, I would love for you to just give our audience a little taste about who is Ledger, what does Ledger do, and then I'll ask a little bit more about what you do there.
Cool. So Ledger is actual, security company. We manufacture security solutions that enable individuals and corporations to secure their digital assets. So basically, to generate their private keys and manage their digital assets. Basically through our different like hardwares, but then on top of that, there's a whole ecosystem that's built around the hardware. There is Ledger Live, which is the companion app of the Ledger device, and it enables you as a user to access a wide variety of different crypto services. You can buy, you can sell your digital assets, you can stake, lend. Obviously, there's the ability to visualize your NFTs as well. On top of that, we have Ledger Markets, so it's another part of the ecosystem where you can distribute your digital assets. So you think about it as like different layers that are built on top of the hardware itself. And the main mission is to provide you as a user with secure experience from the moment you generate your keys to when you transact on the blockchain, to the different services that you would need throughout your journey to, interact with the apps or a variety of different, apps in a more general sense. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what Ledger is all about. We're kind of pretty famous for the Ledger Nanos, but today we have a new product that's coming out, which is Ledger Stax. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Very cool. Well, maybe we should describe a little bit for those who don't know about those devices. First, I own 2 ledgers. I should Ledger Nanos. I should probably have more, actually. But I remember finally getting my first ledger delivered, and just the anxiety I had, quite frankly, because I had already owned some NFTs and I was having to move it over. This would have been mid 2021, I believe, and I think we've come a long way actually since then. I think even the peer-to-peer support back then was still like shaky at best because everyone was just still learning, at least through my community, because I was not a crypto native, and I think a lot of the people in the NFT space at the time were not necessarily crypto native, and so just the learning, but you get this little device in the mail, and it does look like a USB stick. And I think a lot of people have a misconception about what that USB-like device does.
Yeah.
Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Sure. So, the way I like to think about it is, and I'll take a few steps back, right? Like today, what the blockchain technology in a more general sense enables you to do is to actually create an account on the blockchain, and to, either buy or transact, different digital assets, so move value between one account and another in a way that's permissionless and untrustless. So the interesting bit is that if you compare that to a traditional bank, if you want to go and you want to kind of open an account in your, kind of traditional bank on like the corner of your street, you'll come up to the bank and they will ask you for, physical identity, kind of a proof of your physical identity. So identity card, where you live, what in France they would ask you for, electricity bill to be able to prove where you live exactly. So a lot of like different data that you're giving out. The blockchain doesn't really do that. It does not discriminate. It doesn't care who you are. So the only way for you to actually prove to the blockchain that you are you is that when you create that, blockchain account, you get a pair of keys. So a set of private keys and public keys. And you should think of your public key as your address on the blockchain. So mainly, it's kind of the address you give to anyone that you want to be receiving value from. Your email address, if you think about it like a letterbox, is basically your address on the letterbox. And then the private key is really your key to the letterbox. So it's only you are the one who should own it, and it's only you that would be able to then have access to that letterbox to be able to open it up and get the contents out of it. So coming back to that identity analogy, the blockchain, the only way for you to prove to the blockchain that you are you is through that private key. So that being said, now you understand that this is basically the single most important piece of data that you need to protect, because that's basically how you will be able to unlock any value that you have on the blockchain. So now that we understand that this is a very important piece of data, the question that we should ask ourselves is, where is it currently generated and stored? And how could you increase the security of your digital assets by kind of putting in place a better structure in order to secure that piece of data? And today, if you look at how most people are entering the world of self-custody, it's mainly through software wallets. Obviously you have the exchange step first. You go to an exchange, you buy crypto, and then if you fall down the NFT rabbit hole, you're probably gonna, want to self-custody your assets, because that's the only way you'll be able to interact with marketplaces, right? So self-custody usually comes in through, if you look at the user journey, the first step into self-custody is usually software wallet. And software wallets are great. They are easy to use. They enable you to connect to a wide variety of marketplaces. The problem is not the software wallet, is the hardware on top of which it runs. So if you think about the hardware on top of which the different software wallets run, they are what we call Web2 hardwares. So they are hardwares that are connected to the internet, your mobile phone, your iPad, your laptop, etc. So if you think about a Web2 hardware and the difference between Web2 and Web3, Web2 is the Internet of Information, Web3 is the Internet of Value. So any hardware that was designed for Web2 purposes, it was actually designed to share information. That's how you get to log into Uber with your Google account, or you get to log into, whatever account with your Facebook account. And that's how, like, all the different apps on your phone are all connected with one another. The actual design of the hardware, the Web2 hardware, your mobile phone, it's actually designed to share information and not to keep secrets. So getting back to that very important secret that you need to protect, which is your private key, if you end up storing it on a hardware that's actually designed to share information rather than keep secrets, it's kind of like putting a bank vault in a mall. Like, even if you build the best bank vault in the world, you're still gonna have, a shop at the bottom and then another one at the top, and then people like passing by in front of the vault every single day. So it's not going to be as safe as if you have it isolated. So that gets us to what Ledger does. Ledger enables you to actually generate those keys and secure it in a Web3 hardware, which means that it's a device that was designed for the Internet of Value, not the Internet of Information. And it's basically keeping your private keys on what we call a secure element chip, which is the same kind of chips that you could find in your credit card or biometric passports. And any transaction that is then initiated via your Web2 hardware, your phone or your laptop, would then have to be transmitted to the hardware. You would physically verify the information on the screen of the ledger, and then you'd have to actually physically confirm the transaction using the two buttons. So it acts as a two-factor authentication, but it's actually even more than that. It's actually isolating your keys completely from the internet and only providing approval to what you see. So you just verify and then sign every single transaction. So yeah, that, and in kind of a nutshell, that's how Ledger devices work.
It might be worth just highlighting that if you lose or somehow destroy your Ledger device, if you've secured your password, your key phrase, then you are okay. And I think that's one of the concerns for someone who's looking kind of from the outside in that doesn't really understand that component of it. And by the way, I'm not going to get into it right now, but I did almost very, very early on weirdly lose my Ledger. I've ended up recovering it, which was great. But I had that panic moment of, am I safe? Am I okay? So maybe we should take this opportunity. What's this new product that you're putting out there? What's the big differentiator to what's already out there today?
Yeah, I mean, so the new product is Ledger Stax. It's a product that was designed by the co-creator of the iPod and the iPhone, so Tony Fadell. And I think what's really interesting about that product is that on a security level, it's not any different than our previous products. So first of all, it's very secure. Ledger, kind of to give you a little bit of a perspective on that, we secure about 20% of the words cryptocurrencies, 30% of the words NFTs, and our devices have never been hacked. So the device is as secure as our previous devices. But where it adds value is mainly on the user experience side of things. And to your point, for new entrants, I would say that the current user experience that is available to them within the ecosystem is considered to be a little bit too, not as frictionless as the ones that they're used to in the world of Web2, right? And when you think about the different kind of innovations that are happening in the space and the potential for them to onboard, millions of people in the future, they will actually need the hardware that is so much more aligned with how they behave when using consumer tech hardware. Whether it be their phones. Back in the day, you had the iPod, and obviously any other like hardware device that you do use on a daily basis. So Ledger Stax is really designed for future new entrants and current people that are not very technically savvy, and that will need a device that has a much bigger screen, that has the ability to provide you with the information you need in a way that's super clear when you are transacting on the blockchain. It also has the ability to get customized. You can see your different NFTs on the screen of the device, so it's so much more ingrained into like the culture of the space, but also how people like kind of customizing their own devices and using them as like fashion items a little bit, kind of, rather than this weird like kind of security device that you have to be getting out of your wardrobe when you want to be doing like a blockchain transaction. Is so much more of a device that we truly think that people will be using on a daily basis, mainly because the actual use cases of digital assets will also evolve. Like if you think about the future, your gym membership card could be an NFT, your airplane ticket could be an NFT, your digital identity will be stored on your device. So you need to actually have a screen in order to be able to do the different authentication processes that you will have to be going through when you're actually moving around with your digital assets on you. So yeah, the device was actually announced at Ledger Open Paris in December of last year, and we will start shipping it by the beginning of May of this year. I mean, everyone's really excited about it, myself included. I don't think that today we can say that this is a device that's going to be bringing 100 million people into the space, but I'm sure that it will actually facilitate the process for a lot of new entrants that will be able to secure their journeys thanks to much better user experience.
I see Ledger just hit a benchmark in total number of sales of items. It was a big number. Do you know that?
6 million devices sold.
Yeah,
it is a relatively big number that we are very proud of because it really shows how Ledger grew from being a relatively small French company founded in 2014 and started growing progressively, and now we are so much more of a global company. Like you're based in North America. I'm based in France. You know about Ledger. You own Ledger. We were doing a lot of like our different communications in English, and we're trying to be so much more global than just focusing on the Western markets. Trying to have much bigger presence in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. So trying to make sure that that Web3 revolution and the access to blockchain technologies, secure access to blockchain technologies, available to everyone.
I'd love to hear just some of your anecdotes on seeing that arc, like that growth within the company from the beginning. I can only imagine that the sort of NFT boom probably impacted your company's operations to some extent. So I'd love to know just how you've seen that evolution, and maybe you can speak to a little bit of where you see it continuing, kind of from a macro perspective. Like, how do you see growth in this space, especially during such a sort of bear market down cycle part of its evolution?
Sure, that's a great question. I can tell you a little bit more about like how I kind of started my journey at Ledger and
Yes,
how
please.
everything changed, or most things changed since then. I've been at Ledger for about 2 years and a half, and I kind of started working at the company when the company was still considered to be a security, consumer tech company, but not really the Ledger that has evolved into being like a much more of a cultural brand. And to your point, NFTs were a huge unlock there, because with NFTs came in much of the broader, I would say, audience that is coming into the space and interested in art or interested in gaming or interested in a wide variety of different things. And not to say that the space wasn't really adopted in the past. I mean, DeFi was huge, and then obviously like all the different communities of these different blockchains. But we had that transition from being a very kind of company that's operating in a niche culture to being a company that's operating into like building much more of a mainstream type of Web3 culture that is kind of on the borders of mainstream culture. Like if you look at Eminem and kind of Snoop Dogg kind of, rocking their apes in their new music video, Web3 culture becomes culture. It's not only about, the blockchain itself. Like probably most of the people that, know about Bored Ape Yacht Clubs today, they probably know a little bit about the background of, they're probably NFTs, but they know nothing about the technology behind it. And to come back to what I was saying about like when we started working at Ledger, I kind of started working at Ledger's content lead, so producing like educational content for the audience that we had back then, which was mainly technically savvy individuals that were very much into the world of DeFi or very interested into like the different blockchain ecosystems that existed and that exist today as well, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Polkadot, and the idea was for us to provide them with the information they needed in order to be able to kind of safely navigate their journey, and the way we provided that information was I would say very traditional, which means like obviously had a wide variety of like different tutorials and articles and all the Web2 type of content creation mediums that were available to us. And then came in 2021, the bull run and NFTs. And then what we realized is that every day, every week had millions of people getting into the space that knew nothing about the technology. That didn't know much about security. Not even self custody, obviously, which is like the kind of the hard thing there, because to come back to what we were talking about earlier, the user journey itself was so much more accelerated. Where at the beginning people would probably buy crypto and then keep it on an exchange and not understand really the value of self-custody. Like, why would I self-custody my assets if I'm just interested in buying a coin? When the NFTs came in, it was right away. Like, you needed to self-custody your assets in order to be able to buy your NFTs. So with that came like a huge increase of hacks and scams. So like new entrants coming in at such a rapid pace, self-custodying their assets right away, doing it insecurely, and then a lot of hackers and scammers leveraging on that. So we realized that whatever education that we were doing with like the traditional mediums was not going to be as impactful, and we're not going to be able to educate as many people as we wanted if we did not try and find new creative ways to educate the communities. And that's what kicked off everything that we're doing today. So reaching out to communities, building out initiatives with them, starting to produce content in a way that's so much more ingrained in entertainment. So we started doing edutainment series, docu-series, creating content in different forms, video, audio, and a lot of like different also new team members came in to help us out with that. And then we moved from that and we started saying, okay, like today we're actually educating people about Web3 technology, but using Web2 mediums. So how can we start thinking about the bridge between our Web2 educational initiatives and what we could do in the Web3 realms that would enable people to move from theory to practice right away. Launched Ledger Quest with a gamified educational platform where you could log in with your wallet and then go through a quiz and claim a proof of knowledge NFT. We built this first school in the metaverse called School of Block, and gamified it all through gaming. So yeah, that was a very long answer to your question, but I at least was trying to give you like an overview of how the impact of NFTs kind of changed everything in how we did education, but also the different segments and cohorts that were using their products.
Yeah, it's I think really interesting to hear, because I can imagine looking back is one thing, but being in those moments as it's changing so quickly and trying to adapt is another, and not necessarily knowing where it's going to go. can appreciate that. And we will make sure in the show notes to link to some of your resources and programs and initiatives that you have, and certainly your podcast on the Ledger, which is one that I'm familiar with and that I subscribe to, which I think anyone's interested in. You get into a lot of things on that podcast, wide variety, but it's something that I think our listeners would be interested in for sure. This might be a good time for me to head over to my ChatGPT question, because it really talks a bit about the future. Now, ChatGPT, I've mentioned in the past, likes to give me two-part questions. So I'm going to read it out loud, and then I'll focus on the first half of the question. ChatGPT asks, what strategies and best practices do you believe will be key in ensuring the mass adoption of Web3 technology, particularly with regards to security? And how do you think education and community building efforts can play a role in promoting wider adoption of these innovations? Well, actually, I think you touched on that latter half a bit, but if there's anything you want to add, but let's go back to the first part. What strategies and best practices do you believe will be key in ensuring the mass adoption of Web3 tech, particularly with regards to security?
That's a great question. I think it's all about the user experience. I think everything that we're doing today is to try as much as we can to simplify the whole user journey and make sure that with every single piece of this journey, we are able to either provide the infrastructure to secure it, or at the end of the day, work with different partners in order to make sure that the interaction between our ecosystem and theirs is also secure. So I'll give you like a concrete example. Today, one of the biggest, I would say, frictions in the ecosystem is something that we call blind signing. And Ledger cannot solve blind signing on its own. We obviously can do it within our own ecosystem. So, and maybe I could like elaborate a little bit more on what blind signing is for
Yes,
people
please.
who are listening to us and might not know. Blind signing is the act of actually signing a blockchain transaction without being able to physically verify on the screen of your Ledger device the details of that transaction in a human readable language. And the reason why blind signing happens is that most of the time when you're connecting your Ledger to dApp, you're doing it through middleware. So whether most of the time it's a software wallet or basically middlewares like Wallet Connect. And the actual tech stack that is being utilized there between Ledger, the middleware, and the dApp is not equipped with the plugins necessary to translate the smart contract data, which is basically hex data, into human readable language. So you end up YOLO signing. You're basically signing based on trust. In it's kind of an ecosystem that was basically built or designed for trustless kind of transactions and exchanges of value. But anyway, to get back to my point, so how we're doing it with Ledger, like Ledger can protect you from a hack, it can protect you from a mistake. So if you own a Ledger and you have your private key secured on the Ledger, no hacker is going to be able to hack into the Ledger and get your private keys away. But if you do sign a transaction by mistake without having the necessary information that enables you to make the good decision there, you're actually opening up the door for the hacker or the scammer in that case. So there are a variety of different ways through which you can mitigate the risks associated with blind signing, but we see it as our job to be able to provide you with the information to make the right decision. And today we can do it within our own ecosystem. So on Ledger Live, you only have clear signing. All the dApps that are being integrated on Ledger Live are coded in a way that enables you to actually read and verify the smart contract data in a language that you would understand. But we have to be honest with ourselves. We're not going to be able to integrate every single dApp in the world in Ledger Live. So today what we're doing is that we've developed our browser extension, and the browser extension will do two different things. It will do the Web3 checks. So when you're interacting with a smart contract for the first time, it'll tell you that you're interacting with it for the first time. If that smart contract has been flagged on the blockchain as being a malicious smart contract, it will tell you, hey, be careful, you're actually interacting with a smart contract that was flagged by this or this entity, because there's a risk for you. And then on top of that, when you connect to different dApps, we are actually working with them in order for them to implement the plugins that will enable you to clear sign. So kind of long story short, how do we actually make this more safe for people? is by having a hardware that's easier to use, that enables you to visualize the information, and then working with together as different actors in the ecosystem to make sure that our different ecosystems and our different dApps are compatible with one another and provide the user with the information needed for them to make the right decisions. And that's obviously kind of something that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time from different people. But this is where we get to a place where you actually understand what you're doing, and
Yeah.
if there's a risk, you kind of have the ability to avoid it.
Yeah, I'm excited for that future. I can appreciate that it's a process to get there, and it does, I think, emphasize. I think the thing for our listeners, if they're brand new, I think getting accustomed to the steps actually can become quite easy. It's more about avoiding these pitfalls, and I have to say, using a ledger type device can be a good reason for pause. Like for me, and I've kind of had to evolve my practices over time. I'm trying to get better and better and do more like practice what I preach type of behavior. So I don't, interact with my ledger anymore in terms of like buying a new NFT. I'll have to go to my ledger account wallet and send the Ethereum to another wallet and then go. And it does take time, right? And by the way, I don't use my phone. I don't use the computer I'm on right now. Like I have a completely separate device. So anytime I want to do anything, I'm like, I have to take the time, make the effort, be thoughtful. And sometimes I miss things. And that's most degens don't want to miss things. But I do think that for those that are really just learning, like those steps can be very good and safe. And as things evolve and get more simplified, you'll be kind of ready to go, kind of a thing. And learning from these mistakes, which usually involves social engineering, phishing sites, etc., which we try to emphasize. That the crypto space isn't inherently dangerous. It's the people engaging in the crypto space that can be. All right. So I appreciate that. And that actually gives some great insights. You have me thinking about something I wasn't thinking about before, about where it might go, which is wonderful. You've talked a bit about education and community building efforts, how they can play a role in promoting wider adoption of these innovations, mostly from the Ledger perspective, what Ledger is doing. Any thoughts, like from a broader scale, of how that will have a role in mass adoption, just generally speaking?
Absolutely. Like I think if you think about how Web3 is changing the whole notion of um, community building, like Web2, we spoke a lot about communities in Web2, but I think in Web2 it was mainly audiences. Like you did
Yeah.
have a community, but your community was passive. It was
Mhm.
consuming your content and probably providing you with feedback, because you did have the ability to express your opinions in Web2, by commenting or sharing or retweeting. Uh,
Mhm.
but the level of engagement and interaction between an organization, a brand, and its community was completely different than what it is today with Web3. Because I think when you think about it, like Web2 is all about like monetizing attention. I want to grab your attention and I want to provide you with a certain message that would alter your behavior or influence you in some way or another. Um, Being said like that, it doesn't sound like very very appealing, because it isn't really appealing. Like if you think about like the whole business model of Web2, I think it works out pretty well for certain use cases. But then if you want to be educating and interacting and engaging, it's not, I would say, what the kind of the dream toolkit of a marketer would use if it had another option, like being able to tokenize a community and engage with it in the long term, with like different perks and kind of, if you see what some of the different NFT communities are doing on a smaller scale, and then how big corporations are entering the space and seeing what these small communities are doing, and then thinking about, oh, okay, that could be a thing for us. Nike, for instance, what they're doing with Dot Swoosh, and how they're going to be building out their whole community building aspect throughout that platform, whether it be with education, whether it be with co-creation, enabling their community members to actually have a say in how either a product is designed or how it's brought to market. So I think that, to answer your question specifically, how kind of community building will be a catalyst for Web3 adoption. Um, it's really clear that as a brand, if you do it right and if you alter your business model in a way that's not only about utilizing that space as a new marketing stunt, but as a way to actually change your business model, is
Mm-hmm.
really where it's going to become interesting, because you're going to have an incredible amount of significantly more engaged community members that will be your ambassadors and that will also own a little piece of your brand. So the incentives alignment there on like pushing projects forward and co-creation will be insane. And the whole notion of like digital ownership and the ability to custody different assets and monetize them down the road is so interesting, and I think we're just scratching the surface in terms of what's possible
Mm-hmm.
for brands.
Yeah. So on that, just thinking about the future, I think, you know, it's been a funny year, right? Like the interest in NFTs has declined, obviously, from a consumer standpoint, perhaps not necessarily from a corporate standpoint. Like we know a lot of companies are looking at the space, wondering what they might be able to do. They might not be ready to jump in just yet. The narrative around crypto and NFTs, certainly not as positive as many of us would like it to be. It typically focuses on, dropping values, bad players, a lot of the centralized services where things have gone wrong, securities, regulation, et cetera, that, we don't need to get into all of that necessarily, but for some folks, it makes them kind of feel like they're just cautious, like there's just uncertainty. Where's it going to go? What are the rules going to be, et cetera. But when I think about a company like Ledger, kind of from a 50,000 foot level, looking down, seeing the growth over the last several years, probably really planning on, where are we going to be in the next 5, 10? Like, I'd love to know, just from a general sense, what the perspective is, how you see the future. Like, I imagine Ledger's planning to stick around, I guess is my point. Maybe you can add any thinking you have behind that.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely there for the long term. Um, I think to plan for the future, you need to have that understanding and vision on where the space is going. And to kind of quote you, prior to us actually starting to record the podcast, I don't have the crystal ball yet, but
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that I know that the world will have more and more digital assets.
Mm-hmm.
And by seeing everything that the different brands are doing, and everything that even if you think on a like more of a government kind of scale, and like digital identities definitely makes sense. CBDCs, they will come at some point or another. So the world will just become more and more digital. It has been true for the past 20 or 30 years now, and it will continue being true. If you look at like the younger cohorts and how they interact socially, a lot of like the different social interactions happen in digital environments, whether it be Fortnite, Roblox, etc. Today we are actually talking on a digital platform, and we're interacting with, I do like about like, I don't know, 5 to 10 meetings a day. All of them are
Mm-hmm.
done via Gmeet. So just the fact that we're becoming more and more digital, this is probably pretty clear, and then that we'll have more and more digital assets. This is also clear, and that security is going to become an very essential thing in the future, because the more digital value that you have, the more you'll need to secure it. This is also very clear to us. Then the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how do we plan for today, with the right user experience, with the right infrastructure, in order to enable us to secure the different corporations that are getting into the space, as well as
Mm-hmm.
individuals,
Yeah.
and to provide them with the guardrails for vault security, treasury management, distributions of digital assets, and then be able to provide a much better user experience for the users that will be either collecting or transacting with those digital assets. So it's really about like nailing the infrastructure and then developing and iterating on the different use cases that will be available to us.
That's a really, really good point, is thinking about the multi-user experience, like the corporate experience. I know from our perspective, like we're a small Fame Lady Squad, but just figuring out even just like how do we manage small amount of funds, like what's the accountability there, who has access to it. And so from a corporate perspective, having a bit of a roadmap for employees, like how do we get this rolling in a safe and secure way, and that the right people have the right access. That's crossed my mind, but not in a way that has really impacted my thinking of like the macro. Like that's when corporations feel safe or organizations feel safe to be able to do that sort of thing. That will be interesting versus
Absolutely.
taking a leap of faith and figuring it out, because that's what I think a lot of folks are doing right now.
100%. And I think like corporations are really kind of the catalyst here. Like obviously we've seen a few luxury brands doing NFT drops. We've seen a few car manufacturers doing also their kind of NFT drops. But I think at a certain point, every single company in the world will own digital assets. And the question will become mainly about what they do with those digital assets, and how they govern them. And the more this becomes adopted and easily streamlined in terms of like an internal company standpoint, from a regulatory perspective as well, the more those companies will actually increase the digital product lines that they have and how they utilize digital assets, mainly NFTs, to engage with their communities. So we're slowly starting to see it, but I think the next few years will show us what is going to happen in the next decade, because this is really going to be like the main catalyst. There is like the corporate adoption, and then how it impacts the broader market.
And so I'm going to admit I did something that a host of a podcast should not do. I skipped by something I wanted to say, so I'm rewinding for a second here, just because I want to make sure our audience understands a term that was used quite a bit. So sorry, audience, that this is coming maybe 5 minutes too late. But the term dApps, we've used dApps in the show, but not a lot.
Right.
Can you maybe just briefly outline what is a dApp?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think the way there are different explanations to what a dApp is. dApp is decentralized application, but then you'd always get into the kind of argument of, is this decentralized? Is this not decentralized? How, on top of, kind of which blockchain is it running, and where are the nodes, and I think the way I kind of explain what a dApp is it's basically an application that has a Web3 login. So you just use your wallet to log into this.
Right. I appreciate that. I don't think we need to get into the debate. I think personally that's what people need to understand. It's an app that you would use, but it connects to Web3. So just in case you were all wondering. Well, before we go, one of the areas of interest you highlighted, so I'm curious what you have to say about it, is about futurism and AI. And so I'm wondering if you have something that you'd like to discuss related to that, from the context of either Ledger or Web3 in general. I'd just love to know what you're thinking about.
I think it's such an inspiring topic, and I could spend hours on talking about AI and how it's probably going to be changing a lot of what we do today in our different respective um, you know um, jobs and even categories as whole businesses. What I really think is interesting is how technology really unleashes our creativity, and also enables different individuals to be able to do things that they weren't able to do previously, because they probably didn't necessarily have the skills for it. So you take drawing for instance. If you compare a painter, it's much harder to be a painter than an illustrator on like, Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. I think it kind of enables you to achieve your creative vision without necessarily having the physical skill sets that enables you to do it. Not saying that, Photoshop and illustrators are not skilled. They're just skilled at something else that might be a little bit more accessible in terms of like being able to use a computer in order to create an image or to edit an image. It's a different type of skill set, but it enables an accessibility and ability for a much larger number of individuals to actually be able to utilize that technology in order to achieve something that they want to achieve out of their imagination, right? To be so much closer to what you imagine. It's so much easier to do it via Illustrator or Photoshop than to take, a canvas and paintings and do it. And the next step to me in that is not even having to execute, but to narrate your imagination. And when you're able to narrate your imagination, obviously that's a completely different skill set. You have to be a good narrator. You have to be precise in how you tell the story in order for the machine to help you make your kind of imagination come to life. But I think that it's stripping away a lot of the kind of barriers that would face anyone if they wanted to bring their kind of imagination or their vision to life. And if you look at like how that can be utilized in different businesses, and obviously, give you an example, like for someone who's working on content creation, and tone of voice is such an important thing, but how do you actually unify brand's tone of voice without having to actually take every single content creator and briefing them and then providing them with guidelines and doing this and that? I think in terms of like the creative vision that you have as someone who's like either chief creative officer of a certain brand, or even like anyone who's working like in a creative industry, you can use some of like the prompts that are available to you in a kind of AI, and it could be like a unifying prompt that you include in every single creation that you're doing, so that you're able to unify a much bigger vision. So I think in a matter of like being able to execute a vision, but then able to scale it and collaborate with other individuals based on that vision, the narration that AI enables us to leverage on is just such an interesting thing. That is probably like, I'm taking a very like specific example, but that one to me is very inspiring. And I think that if you look at like the different things that could be utilized in the future using that mechanic, there are things that we might not think of today, but that will be kind of very inspiring and impactful in the future.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how all of this stuff intersects and what, creative people bring to the table with it. I mean, it's just, I think it's tough for us to predict what the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years are going to have for us. And so I think that just emphasizes for those who have curious minds and who want to stay on top of things, just how important it is to be paying attention and to at least know what's going on, right? So with that being said, I'll reiterate, we'll make sure that if you're interested in what Mo is working on, if you're interested what Ledger is working on, and some of the resources that they have, we'll have links in the show notes. Ledger Academy, Ledger Quest, Ledger Educate, Ledger Verse, on the Ledger podcast. I'm sure you have, and some of this is probably on YouTube. So we'll make sure to have all of that, because really Ledger is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest source for education, especially related to safety, but other things in the space. So Mo, thank you so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure. I think we could dive deeper into all of these, but we got to keep it at a certain time length. If people want to follow you or Ledger, where can they find you? And we'll make sure those links are in the show notes too.
Perfect. So thanks for all the amazing questions and the nice plug towards the end. So like if you wanna follow me on Twitter, it's Mo_Rels, RELS, and then for Ledger it's just @Ledger on both Twitter, Instagram, and obviously Facebook. And yeah, I mean, it was such an interesting discussion. I think we went a lot of different places, and I really do love that and appreciate the conversation. So thank you so much for having me, Ashley.
Thank you, Mo. All right, everybody. Stay tuned for the next one where we tell stories of innovation from the blockchain. Thank you for joining us on From the Blockchain. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions about today's episode, please send us a message so we can answer it. If you want to learn more about Fame Lady Squad or how you can get involved with NFTs, please visit our website or join our growing community on Discord. We genuinely believe we couldn't do the things we do without the support of our community and listeners like you. So thank you. We'll see you again soon.